Sharing her insights with us today is Genevieve Villafranca Jopanda, the co-chairperson of Filipino Americans for Harris-Walz 2024. She is also a government and international affairs consultant. Thanks for joining us live this afternoon, Genevieve, Lourdes, and Denise.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor.
Love the outfit.
Thank
Is that
you.
here, or did you bring that with you from San Francisco?
It's actually custom. My tita made this.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Not bad. All right, so you've been with the, of course, Democratic campaign.
Yes.
And the San Francisco's tended to traditionally vote, well, liberal. Well, it's interesting because our previous interview last week, we had a Filipino Republican as an interview subject. It's very interesting. He's from Kentucky.
Right, right.
Okay, so so many conflicting data. Are there more Pinoys voting for Kamala or more Pinoys voting for Trump?
I would say that there's a lot of increased support for Kamala, especially since she has been the presidential nominee and since Tim Walz has been the nominee as well. We're seeing a lot of people cross over. Currently, the polls I just checked basically supporting Kamala at 49%, where Trump is at 45%, where most of the battleground states are supporting her. And that's out of 7 of the battleground states. 2 of them, Georgia and Nevada, just flipped, over just 0.2 to 3 points in her favor in the last 2 weeks. So you're seeing a shift in support there. I think in Filipinos, I also see that there are Republicans for Harris. So we have Republicans reaching out to the Filipino American Harris-Walz campaign, wanting to support because they don't feel that Trump represents their values. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Okay, Genevieve, I want to
Sure.
ask you, because you were talking about just the flip and the increase in percentage for Kamala Harris. Why do you think that shift happened? What caused it? What triggered it? And if somebody were to ask you why they should vote for Kamala, what would your answer be?
Well, I think it's just foundational basics, right? We're interviewing people for a job. So if you were to sit there and you're hiring people for a job and you tell them this is the job description, and then you have a candidate that says, this is my background, my history, I've done this, this, and this. Should you choose me, I'm going to do, accomplish these things for you and basically expand your mission. And then you have another candidate that basically says, oh, all of those other candidates that you interviewed, I'm just better than them. They say, well, what are your qualifications? Well, all my friends and, people around me, they say I'm the best. So you have someone that actually has done the job and actually have a plan. And then you have somebody who's just using, I don't know, you're not being interviewed for a circus. You're being interviewed for the job. One of the greatest jobs in not just the country, but the whole universe. The universe globally looked to the United States as, the top, country to lean on. So that in my opinion, that's the difference.
I just want to touch on that because Kamala, during the debate, she had all these plans laid out.
Sure.
And then when Trump was asked for it or asked about it, he said he has a concept of a plan because he's not president yet. What's your take on that?
Well, he is not president yet, but he has been president before, and he knows he's been running for president for a long time. So why does he not have a plan yet, right? If you know that you're going to be running or you're going to be applying for the job for 4 years or 8 years and you've done the job, why don't you have plans? That's just, again, foundational basics, not even on a presidential level.
Is this a fun thing to talk about politics over, let's say, Noche Buena,
Yes.
Traditional Filipino gatherings?
Yes.
When politics comes up as a subject, how divisive is this, or is it like a drinking game?
I think it depends on the families, right? I'm very lucky to be part of a family that share the same values as I. It wasn't always like that. My parents actually were Republicans when they first immigrated to the Philippines, but I think that's because out of comfort or out of familiarity. So the people that they were surrounded by were Republicans. Yeah. And it wasn't until it came to policies or issues where they needed help and they saw that the Democrats, who represent them, actually help resolve their issues, and they started to see that their values are in line with theirs, then they went ahead and switched over. So I think that I'm lucky in that sense. We actually make it a discussion. We actually make it like a party and make it fun when it comes to elections. I do a voter guide. My friends and family will reach out to me like, hey, where's your voter guide? We have ballot filling out parties because we need to educate ourselves of what we're actually making decisions for. It's not just a one issue, topic or, a candidate. There's not one candidate is going to check off all the boxes, but which candidate best represents you for everything, right? Not just one issue. And I think that's the difference here.
Can you give me an insight into the typical psychology? Well, if we, at least just attempt the psychology of a Filipino Republican. Let's say when Trump says, Haitian immigrants are eating dogs. Well, the Azucena lovers in us are triggered. We can feel attacked, but you can easily replace Haitian with all possible immigrants categories. So, what's with? I can understand older Filipinos going Republican because of certain conservative traditional values, but younger Pinoy Republicans.
I'm not quite sure. What I observe is Trump supporters will just be Trump supporters, if that makes sense. They're very loyal to him. And so even my observation after the last debate, I was looking at social media posts and online boards, and people think he did amazing. They really think they did amazing. So I think when you look at somebody, you support them, you have this bias, right? I call it blind loyalty. So when you're loyal to that person, you're blind to all of their faults. You just want to support that person because for whatever reason, they support what is important to you, whether that's one issue or it's the way that he postures himself and what you think a leader should carry himself or do. I'm unsure as to.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that's called a cult. That's cultish behavior. Sorry, I just said.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Before she asks anything,
Sure.
Are you a gun owner?
I am not a gun owner, but I do have a hunting license. And not that I hunt, but I did that on purpose in the sense of, the work that I do is predominantly male driven. So I did it as a woman of color to not be left out because they would say, Genevieve, you don't know how to, you don't know how to smoke cigars. You don't know how to play golf. You don't know how to drink whiskey. So you can't go to these meetings. And so for me to be at the table, I have to be in those spaces so that way I'm not left out. So that it was a strategy.
Okay, speaking of strategies, actually there was from a political strategist view, they're suggesting that many American voters are now tuning out of the campaign altogether. Just your reaction.
I don't think people are tuning out. I think people are actually tuning in. There's many people who have reached out to me who have not been political at all that want to be part of the election, right? Fil-Ams for Harris-Walz, we were at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. We had over 100 people sign up after our kickoff on July 30th to participate. They're going to Chicago on their own time and dime to be part of something that they've never been part of before. Like that is the holy grail of being Democrat, is to go all the way to the Democratic National Convention. And so you have people who have never been political before that want to get involved. They want to donate. They want to host fundraisers. They want to learn how to knock on doors and do voter registration, whatever they can, because this is very important to them. They don't want to go back.
How important is this, would you say, this coming elections compared to the past ones? And how is this going to affect the Filipino community back in the States?
They're saying that it's the most important election in our lifetime. Do you agree with that observation?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't want another last 4 years. I think that it was spewed with the rhetoric of hate, and I think we need to be in a position, and we need a leader that doesn't tolerate hate and doesn't promote hate, right? We saw a lot of that through the pandemic and how it was mishandled and how it was blamed on, the Asian people, and then how that broke out into, hate, right? I'm a basically product of this. I'm a survivor of that violence. I was robbed at gunpoint, and you hear about violence happening, and people just say, oh, that happens. You look at mass shootings, right? There's
another one recently.
So far this country has had 432 mass shootings. And that is just, you shouldn't just tolerate that, like, oh, that's just everyday life. My niece is a teacher, a brand new teacher, just graduated, and I asked her, hey, do you have to do active shooter training? Teachers shouldn't have to do that. And parents should not be scared to drop their kids off at school. That should not be a fact of life.
Okay, is there any sort of paranoia or any fear on the part of the Democrats? Like, let's say, what happened during Obama was you had the backlash, you had the Tea Party, like something like the Tea Party, expanding after Obama as a reaction, Yeah. How do you see something like this similar happening? Should Kamala win?
Thank you. That typically is a natural reaction to any time a party loses, right? Because they lost, then they revamp their party to make sure that they win the next time. So that typically happens whether it's a presidential campaign or a local or federal campaign. And so, and I think because his followers or supporters really thought that they won, right? And it's only recently that he admitted that he did lose. That of course they're going to do whatever they can to hire the leader that they think that best represents them and best executes the policies, protections, or non-protections of people outside of themselves. You want a leader that represents everybody, not just a small portion of the population,
but
right?
I think going to the mind of those people, they think that you're going to replace us, referring to old white American males, whose definition of MAGA, the MAGA crowd, the typical white male macho with his guns. The backlash, well, is it true that they say that a Filipino is basically liberal until he or she gets his citizenship and then becomes conservative and hates immigrants all of a sudden?
I haven't heard of that. I haven't seen data like that, but I think that, I've seen, I think I question and I sometimes wonder how Filipinos who are immigrants, right, and then get, like you said, get their citizenship and then choose a way that is not immigrant friendly, right? Choose a way or choose a candidate that would deport people that was someone just like you. That was you.
Yeah.
So now you're a citizen and it doesn't matter.
It's basically this is a joke. Okay. So tell us about your work as a government and international affairs consultant and your work for nonprofit organizations and the Filipino Young Leaders Program, which you are head of.
Thank you. I did want to mention, part of the work that I do is in response to what the current administration in the United States has done in terms of pumping $500 million to the Philippines through the CHIPS Act, basically expanding the semiconductor industry here. So what I currently do as a government affairs and international affairs consultant is I work with organizations like the Apple DF Foundation that work towards workforce development around electric mobility. So, Apple was part of the Biden trade mission earlier this year with Secretary Raimondo. And they established an MOU with the Asian Development Bank to basically establish a center of excellence to be able to train and skill and upskill current technicians around e-mobility infrastructure, because that's going to be the future. So let's prepare our current workforce and develop them so that way we're able to expand the workforce, but also be ready for what's to come, right? And part of that, everything that we use, smartphones and cell phones and computers, all have a brain in that. That's a chip, and that's through the semiconductor business. And so we need to help expand our current operators here in the Philippines, so that way we could have the manufacturing and the design in our own backyard, and not just be basically outsourced from other countries. We have so many talented people here in the country, but I think we need to do better in terms of posturing ourselves as leaders and not just keeping our head down and doing the work.
Is that same stuff that they use for Jewish space lasers, right?
Everything.
Okay.
I thought that was a real thing.
Sorry.
They probably can't do it.
They probably can't do it. But, okay. So, thank you very much. So many things to discuss, but it's a pleasure having you over. Genevieve Villafranca Jopanda, the co-chair of Filipino Americans for Harris-Walz 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having
Would
me.
you like to greet some of your kababayan in Ilonggo?
Oh, mayong hapon sa inyo tanan mga Ilonggo. So nice to see you, and I'm very proud Ilongga. Thank you, Ged.
All right.
Thanks again for joining us.